Alright, here we go with Mr. Orr's Flipped Classroom for Grammar, Level 3, Sentence Patterns. This is the second series of sentence patterns, 4, 4a, and 5. First is sentence pattern 4. Sentences with series, a series without a conjunction. Make sure you're taking notes. Remember that when you're doing your grammar packet for your level this week, it means you complete the exercises in the packet itself, but you also have to create 5 examples of your own for each of the 3 patterns, 4, 4a, and 5, so for a total of 15 sentences, which correctly follow the patterns. Mr. Orth will review those on the test day in a conference with you and let you know if you need to make any revisions in order to earn full credit. Let's begin. First, a definition. For purposes of this work, we're going to define a series as a group of 3 or more similar items which all go in the same slot of the sentence. In other words, all items must be parallel within that series. For defining parallel structure, these are words or phrases that are placed in the same relative location in a sentence because they serve the same grammatical purpose. We'll see this in the examples. Also, coordinating conjunctions, also referred to in the text as a connector or letter C for abbreviation. These are commonly used words that connect 2 words or phrases of equal importance, also known as fanboys. If you don't have those in your notes, you may want to pause the video in order to write those down. Here's the formula. A, B, and C, and then the rest of the sentence. It may not seem like it's much of a pattern, but the key difference here is that you're not using a coordinating conjunction, which is a direct contradiction from what you've been taught in previous years, even perhaps with Mr. Orth. The idea here is that you are intentionally making things even more of a series, even more parallel in the pattern, by intentionally not using a conjunction. You may find that some instructors will not necessarily understand that you're doing this on purpose, but you may have to explain to them some information or even point them to this video. The series itself may not be totally parallel. I strongly encourage you that it should be, at least to start. The example. The original sentence is that I wanted to travel far from my home, I wanted to travel far from my work, I wanted to travel far from my life. So to combine them, we keep the part that's the same consistent. I want to travel far from. We keep the my with each of those 3 things because it grammatically makes a little more sense. Rather than saying I want to travel far from my home, work, and life, I want to travel far from my home, my work, my life. When you're doing this kind of series, it's important that the 3rd item in the series be perhaps more significant, more interesting, perhaps even surprising, as a way of indicating that it wasn't just a random choice to omit that particular conjunction. Sentence pattern 4a. Sentences with series. This is now a series with a variation. So again, similar to what we did in the last set. Again, we'll restate the definition of a series as a group of 3 or more similar items which all go in the same slot of the sentence. In this case, we're just reminding you that all items must be or have the same parts of speech and perform the same role in the sentence. Coordinating conjunction continues to be the connector we use for this purposes. In this case, instead of using commas to separate those 3 items, we're going to have the option of either putting some kind of fanboys. You can use or, and, in some cases nor, but probably that's about it. I don't notice necessarily there's examples where yet, for, so, but are going to be great choices. And or and possibly nor are going to be your best options here. But essentially, it's called pattern 4a because it's a slight variation of pattern 4 where you simply use commas to separate 3 items in a series. In this case, we're repeatedly using a coordinating conjunction rather than a comma to separate the items in a series. You can have more than 3, but 3 tends to be one of the strongest ways to organize these. A dash may be used in this case to emphasize the last item in the series. Not necessary, not required, but as we said in the last pattern, that 3rd item in a series oftentimes needs special emphasis, and if it's not obvious to the reader, a dash is a way to point it out to that individual that this is not necessarily on equal terms with the rest of the items in the series. Here's an example. Rachel wished to see Rome. Rachel wished to see Paris. Rachel wished to see the whole world. You can see in the example that Rome and Paris clearly are individual cities, but the whole world is more expansive. It's not on the same level, even grammatically if it works. In this case, the combination is Rachel wished to see Rome and Paris, adding in the dash, and then adding in and the whole world. So we don't necessarily have to have the dash there, but it adds a little oomph to it and is valuable for that reason. Finally, in our sentence of a series, now we're going to look at a series of balanced pairs. The definition of series has not changed. New is the definition of a balanced pair. A balanced pair is a set of two parallel words that serve the same purpose in a sentence. Also, these words should sound similar enough in syllabification or alliteration to have rhythm. So now we're not just putting these in series because they serve the same purpose, but also because of how they sound or how they might feel when spoken aloud. For purposes of defining things, syllabification is the syllables or beats in a word, which may include emphasis or stressed syllables. Alliteration is the use of the same sound to start multiple words, particularly when it comes to consonants, such as the example of sweet sounds. Think of tongue twisters, and you have a pretty good idea of alliteration. In practice, the formula is A and B, comma, C and D, comma, E and F, and the rest of the sentence. It could occur at the beginning of a sentence or at the end of a sentence. In the middle can get confusing and can be valuable. Typically in this pattern you use coordinate conjunction to create the compound subject, the compound object, the compound verb. Examples. Heroes will always need their villains. Using a colon there. Peter Pan and Captain Hook, semicolon, Luke and Darth, semicolon, U.P. Warsht and C.R.E.B. For those who don't know, the last pair is from an original play by Mr. Orth called Hollywood High. Looking at that example, we have Peter Pan and Captain Hook. In this case, because we have a complex list, we've got a semicolon there. You could usually use a comma as well, but in this case, we want to be clear that the first part, Peter Pan and Captain Hook, Luke and Darth, U.P. Warsht and C.R.E.B., if that were to lead the sentence, we couldn't have a colon after that. We could use a dash, but we couldn't use a colon because it wouldn't be a complete sentence leading to that. You can use a colon in this case because you're adding to a complex series where you've got things that aren't all an equal level. These are balanced pairs. Peter Pan and Captain Hook go together. Luke and Darth go together. U.P. Warsht and C.R.E.B. go together. Syllables don't line up. Alliteration doesn't necessarily work, but we definitely have a match set. Time now to go to your own practice and talk to your teacher when you have questions about whether or not you're constructing the sentences properly. Good hunting.